Welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Israel's military has captured the Al-Shifa hospital in northern Gaza, in the Gaza city, and they've made some significant discoveries of tunnels, arms and ammunition. And breaking this down for me today is my colleague, National Security Editor Aditya Rajkol. Aditya, tell us what's been going on in Gaza for the last couple of days.
Well, it's been more than 45 days that the war has broken out after the deadly terror attack. And of course, the Israeli army, the Israeli IDF is inching closer. We're being told that the backroom negotiations are underway and there could be a possible breakthrough in the next 24 to 48 hours. But this is what has been happening over the last many days. There's no consensus between the multiple parties that are involved, including Egypt as well as Qatar, who are acting as mediators between Israel, US and Hamas in this particular case. But the big talking point over the last 3 days has been Israel's attack at the Al-Shifa hospital, where a lot of warning signals had gone through. And there was a lot of propaganda doing rounds, at least in the Hamas supporting press, that there was no tunnels, no terror infrastructure, or this was not an area used by Hamas to attack Israel. But the security footage that was released by the IDF clearly indicated that a Nepalese as well as a Thai national were being guarded inside. In fact, there were Hamas terrorists.
This is the CCTV footage.
This is the CCTV footage from 7th October.
That's right.
When people were being brought in, hostages abducted from southern Israel.
Right.
And this is the video, actually. And you can clearly see these two individuals who are actually being taken inside a ward. One of them it seems to be injured as well, and are being escorted by armed gunmen, armed Hamas terrorists inside this particular ward of the Al-Shifa hospital. Apart from this footage that we have gathered from the IDF, there's also a big revelation, and this is the 55-meter tunnel that has been discovered by the IDF under the Al-Shifa hospital. Remember, the IDF for days together has been saying that Al-Shifa hospital is one of the command centers of the Hamas terrorists, and this tunnel shaft clearly indicates that Al-Shifa hospital was also being used by Hamas, and innocent civilians who were in fact patients in the hospital were being used as human shield, and that includes the multiple babies that the UN has now escorted out of the hospital. So the propaganda wars or the information warfare really continues. But in latest update, what we hear is that in the latest airstrikes, 3 operational commanders of Hamas have now been killed by the IDF. So both the
that's the tunnel there, Aditya, that you were mentioning.
Yes, this is the tunnel that we are talking about.
The 50-meter deep tunnel.
Yeah. So apart from this tunnel, there's a lot of ammunition, a lot of laptops and other intelligence that has also been gathered by the IDF, not just from this particular tunnel, but from the Al-Shifa hospital and from neighboring buildings as well.
Right, so we haven't heard the last of the Al-Shifa building yet, and clearly the IDF is still going through this. They must be very careful about booby traps. I'm sure that a lot of these tunnels could be booby trap abandoned by Hamas fighters. So this kind of proves beyond reasonable doubt, Aditya, you think that the fact that the Al-Shifa hospital was indeed used to store hostages, to keep hostages, and there was a command center underneath the hospital?
Well, it's an open secret. Sandeep, we've been discussing this for over 1.5 months now, that how Hamas, not just here, but in the past as well, has been using civilians as human shields. They don't care about it. They're very blatant about it, and has used schools, playgrounds, UN compounds, and this time hospitals with evidence as their command centers and to escape. You have a lot of these uniforms that are lying around, and they have been moving around in civilian clothes, merging with the common population. But the hostages are still with them, close to 230 to 240 in number. In fact, we are told that a pregnant lady who was with the Hamas has now delivered a baby in captivity. And so the youngest person now is actually a newborn baby, which is held captive by the Hamas terrorists. So we'll have to wait and watch how long this drama really unfolds, because the hostage crisis is really worsening. Of course, there were 2 bodies a few days ago that were discovered near the Al-Shifa hospital, and now we're being told that a lot of these terrorists and fighters might have moved with the population towards the Egyptian border to escape from there.
And which explains why the IDF is going after the southern part of Gaza city, and it's quite likely that operations would begin there. And it's going to be horrific, Aditya. I mean, if given the sheer number of people that are cloistered into that small space in the southern part of Gaza.
Yes.
But there's also talk of significant progress being made in hostage negotiations between Israel and Hamas. I'm just citing what Egypt's Al-Rad channel, which cited a source in Hamas, claimed that from tomorrow morning a ceasefire will begin in exchange for the release of captives, and that's this morning. And the Hostages and Missing Families Forum, in fact, says that there's significant progress in these talks. What do we know about these talks? And this is clearly Hamas and Israel, but with a mediator, Egypt and
Well,
Qatar.
yes, Hamas and Israel have been in touch, through their interlocutors, through the intelligence mechanism that they already have. But apart from that, this time around, Qatar and as well as Egypt are acting as mediators because they are also directly impacted in many ways because a lot of the Hamas commanders sit in Qatar, they stay in Qatar, and Egypt shares a border with Gaza. So they have hand in whatever happens in Gaza or at the Gaza border, really. Apart from that, US's involvement and a lot of American citizens also held captive as hostages by Hamas clearly signifies the importance of the negotiations that are taking place. So yes, we've been hearing that there will be these humanitarian pauses and brief ceasefire periods that will happen from today onwards. But there's an official announcement that's awaited both from Israel and United States on what is the bargain really. If they allow a humanitarian pause and a ceasefire, will the Hamas immediately release 50 to 70 of the hostages, because then they do not have a leverage. So we'll have to wait and watch how things unfold, but it's likely that some kind of a mechanism has been drawn out and will be visible in the next 24 to 48
So
hours.
Hamas is clearly using these hostages as a bargaining chip to save themselves, and this is something that we've been talking of from the 7th of October itself. The reason why they took such a large number of hostages. What else do we know about the state of Hamas, Aditya? They're under constant bombardment day and night, I'm sure, with the Israelis hunting them down, knocking them in their apartments where they've been hiding. They've been demolishing buildings, we're told, where Hamas fighters are supposed to be staying. But Hamas must be under tremendous pressure at this moment.
Firstly, Sandeep, terrorists cannot be trusted. And that's why from the very beginning, when we saw actually gory visuals of the Hamas terrorists attacking southern Israel, villages and these kibbutz, it was openly visible from CCTV and user, images of how brutal their actions really were. And then the commanders and the spokespersons of Hamas had the audacity of going on live television and saying that civilians were not a target. We did not target civilians. We were only targeting military personnel of Israel. Blatant lie. On the other hand, a lot of casualties have been suffered by the Hamas. These are both in airstrikes as well as in the ground attacks that have happened over the last 2 to 3 weeks. We are also hearing reports from different areas in central as well as in other areas of Gaza, where people who are staying in the ground floor areas are saying that actually there's firing happening underneath, and there are people pleading to save us. So it seems that in many areas Hamas terrorists could be actually stuck inside these tunnels.
Inside these tunnels.
So places, these tunnels that were used to escape the IDF were used to actually carry a lot of ammunition and missiles and rockets, perhaps will become tombstones of these very Hamas terrorists who are actually occupying them and do not have a way out.
Right. In fact, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he outlined the 3 objectives of the Israeli military. The first one is to destroy Hamas, the second is to rescue the hostages, and finally it's to ensure that Gaza is never used as a launch pad against Israel. Of course, these are easier said than done, and the war, from all accounts, it seems to be very likely that it will spill over into 2024 as well.
Of course, I have no doubts in my mind that it's a long war. We've been stating that on your show repeatedly. And, it's a step-by-step approach. Israel is also not trying to jump the gun. They have a strategy in mind. They do not want to become victims of the booby traps that have been laid around. They also do not want a large-scale, casualties of civilians. Of course, civilians have died. We do not have a definite number. Hamas says more than 50,000. Israel says these are exaggerated numbers that are backed by John Kirby from US, who says that this is Hamas-led Ministry of Health and does not have any credibility. So we'll have to wait and watch how many civilians actually lost their lives, but it's a long war. It's a permanent or at least a temporary occupation of Gaza that will happen. Hamas will be cleared out from this entire territory. It will be a new reality, that's just like Benjamin Netanyahu has mentioned, and I think US will back them till the time the last Hamas terrorist is actually eliminated, but it will be a long task because, as I said, a lot of these Hamas terrorists have merged with the local population, and in the local population as well, there will be a lot of people who are radicalized. So you do not know, there would be fresh recruitments also happening with the kind of refugee crisis that will unfold now.
Right.
A lot of youngsters who would be teenagers who would be radicalized and willing to actually pick up the gun and strike at the IDF.
While the war is on, and so the Hamas would be actually actively recruiting while we speak. That's
absolutely in Kashmir, in our side of the world, we have seen that in funerals, when a terror commander of Lashkar-e-Toiba or Jaish-e-Mohammed was killed, funerals were the epicenter of recruitment. There were at least 4 to 10 new terrorists, perhaps from the age of 16 to 30, who used to be recruited.
That's a very interesting observation, and in fact, I don't think we've seen anything so far to suggest that this could actually be a very clear recruitment tool for Hamas, and that organization that Israel is kind of vowed to eliminate could actually get a new life and new recruits.
Absolutely. That's why after years and years, the government of India had to finally take a call and say that we will not allow public funeral to take place. Only the immediate family members will be allowed. In this particular case, since the war is on, it's an active situation and it's a small area that we are talking about, so it will be a complex operation. There are other priorities for Israel right now. That includes hostage rescue, that includes killing the Hamas and trying to save their own soldiers from the booby traps and the tunnel shafts that are laid out all across the city. So yes, they're trying to push the civilians away towards the border, but also trying to ensure that they do not face any more casualties, because if the numbers are correct, they already faced about 65 casualties in the last 45 days.
The IDF has, yes. But that's a very small number, compared to what the kind of projections that were being made early on, the kind of urban warfare that the IDF would be confronted with. That these are numbers that they can live with. But
that's right, because it was being said that tunnels are difficult to actually navigate, and they do not know what's underneath. So if they plan to actually go inside the tunnels, they could face mass casualties, and this is what the IDF has avoided. They are, trusting the airstrikes as much as possible. Of course, with the local intelligence from the Amal and Shin Bet, they're trying to launch operations both on ground and from sea as well as from air. But at this moment, they're trying to restrict their casualties as much as possible. I think that's a very sensible call that they've taken, that it might take few more days, few more weeks. We are trying to avoid the casualties as much as possible.
Right. Moving south, the Red Sea is one of the world's busiest waterways. Over 20,000 ships transit through these waters each year at a rate of 70 ships per day. It's particularly important for India because a bulk of our trade with West Asia and Europe passes through here. And now comes a report that an India-bound ship was hijacked by Yemen's Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. My colleague Kiran Tare interviewed Captain Sanjay Parashar, a veteran maritime watcher, on these developments. Let's listen in.
This is a very serious. I think there's a breach in the banking data, because this kind of information is only available with the bankers who are the investors. It's a Bahamas car carrier, and the freeboard is pretty high. It would not have been possible if somebody from the bank knows who are the investors in a Bahama-based company and he passes on the information. And they must have planned it well in advance from the time vessel left Turkey. So I think probably some of the Palestinian sympathizers are already with the banks, and this doesn't sound good for the shipping, because everything is wide open now. That means investors are known to the world. Yeah, because on a car carrier, generally to board the ship with the 20-meter air draft is not possible, So the only way they could have come is probably well-planned manner, which has been rehearsed well. And everybody's been caught with the surprises onto this. So I think it cannot happen without some military operations, I mean to say military people are involved. Let me be a little blunt on this.
From the Red Sea, we come to the heart of India's national capital. A year ago, New Delhi was shocked by the brutal murder of a 27-year-old lady, Shraddha Walkar, in the heart of Delhi. She was allegedly murdered by her live-in boyfriend, Aftab Poonawala. And joining me to talk about this is my colleague Deepak Badana, who's been covering this story. Deepak, where is this case at right now, a year later?
At the moment, what's happening is that the court is recording statements of witnesses. See, the legal procedure in India takes its time. There are many reasons for that. But if you want to look at the timeline, what happened last year was that the case only came to light, I believe, on November the 12th, when Aftab Poonawalla actually...
Shraddha was murdered in May and...
Yeah, in the, I think, the third week of May. Right. And it took 4 months for anybody to even, get a hint about it. It became a media sensation once he confessed, during the investigation. That was, I think, around the 12th of November. By the 20th, the investigating authorities had found the evidence, the remains from the forest where he had dumped the parts. It took until mid-January for the DNA reports to come out, after which, on January the 24th, the Delhi police actually filed charges. And the matter was listed for some time during February of this year. Then in May 2023, the court had actually filed the charges. And as of now, the statements are being recorded. So the process is taking its, turn.
Right. And Deepak, you've covered this case very closely. You've produced that documentary on it. But what is the most horrific aspect of this, apart from the fact, the very gruesome nature of the way the Shraddha's body was treated allegedly by her boyfriend?
See, one of the things that really struck everyone was the 4-month period, and that speaks to the alienation that exists in large metropolitans. You've got blocks and blocks of apartments where we don't really know who lives next to us. So, people are strangers amongst their neighbors. What ended up happening was that for 4 months, nobody had any clue what was happening. Not the neighbors, not her family, who she was apparently not on speaking terms with. We actually looked into that aspect in our documentary as well. So that was something something to think about.
The alienation. In fact, let's look at your documentary, The Butcher of Mehrauli.
दिल्ली के मेहरौली में 35 टुकड़ों में अपनी गर्लफ्रेंड को आरी से काट डाला।
पॉलीथीन में लाश के टुकड़े होते थे।
पुलिस की टीम तलाशी अभियान चला रही है।
I was quite shocked. It was just unthinkable. I think it was just monstrous. It was beastly and abominable.
From the word go, it seems until today that this gentleman is a textbook example of antisocial personality disorder or psychopathic personality.
It's a very, very heinous crime. It's a very, very gruesome murder. Only it can be performed only by a butcher.
The whole of Delhi and NCR region woke up to this horrible news. A resident in Mehrauli had no idea that Aftab and Shraddha were shifted to one of the residential colonies. Their fate would end up like this. When the news started filtering in about how Aftab butchered Shraddha and cut her into 35 pieces, everybody was stunned.
This was the terrible end of a toxic relationship that went horribly wrong. These people, Shraddha and Aftab, had left their families to be together. Now in Delhi, there was trouble in paradise. Shraddha wanted marriage, while Aftab was reluctant. Matters came to a head with a massive showdown. Gripped with rage, Aftab strangulated Shraddha. Aftab was an avid fan of the television crime drama Dexter. The protagonist of the show, Morgan Dexter, a serial killer, would now provide him with inspiration. Aftab cut Shraddha's body into 35 parts and put them in a freezer. Like Dexter, he wrapped them tightly in polythene bags. Carrying them in a backpack, he would venture out at 2 a.m. in the night in Chhatarpur Pahadi. And then, in the jungles of Mehrauli, he would throw the body parts. Boy next door or cold-blooded psychopath? We do a deep dive to analyze the mind and motivations of Aftab Poonawalla.
I must say that much as an average citizen or average person will find it very difficult to understand or conceive, scientifically, not just from books but also from the cases that we have seen over the years and decades, one must recognize that persons with this amount of criminally violent psychopathic personality profile at least in periods, on specific occasions, if not all through life, have a total blunting out or freezing out of the emotional aspect. The core of people with psychopathic personality or antisocial personality disorder is total lack of respect for social values, other people around, self-gratification, cold, indifferent emotional relationships, and barbaric violence on occasions from time to time. One must clarify that there are also in textbooks of psychopathology and jurisprudence, there are types and types of psychopaths described. So there is the violent person with psychopath.
He learnt it after seeing web series, and he was following other murders on Google as to how body can be disposed of, how murders have taken place like this before. And it's a very, very cold-blooded murder, and carried out with a lot of planning and with a very stable mind. And he continued with this for a few months, because otherwise it is difficult for a person to remain sane after committing such a heinous crime.
So while you and I might find it very difficult to conceive of every step that this person is supposed to have carried out, for him or any her in similar situation, it is not even registered as an emotional issue. Cold indifference, especially when it comes to, and that fits in this case very well.
Aftab was like a magician, you know, he donned many hats. He was a chef, he was a blogger, he was a feminist, he was an LGBTQ supporter. So everybody kind of seemed to know Aftab. But nobody really knew who Aftab was till this case came out.
A classic psychopath can be very suave, very sweet and effective temporarily, God forbid, sometimes even for long. Like, again, from the available information till now, it would seem, from the last few days what we know, that he was successful in maneuvering her and her emotions, not only for those 3 or 4 years, but even the last few days.
See, maybe he was wearing a mask. Mukhota pehan rakha tha. I mean, on Facebook, he had this mukhota, this mask, just to impress the girls, to attract them. So that once they are attracted, he could get in touch with them, he could fraternize with them, he could lure them, he could tempt them and get the girls into her trap. Maybe it was more for show, more for exhibition, more for demonstration, and it did not reflect his genuine tastes or inclinations.
Persons with psychopathic personality profile do not have that core of empathy or sensitivity, or at least I'll qualify that further. Very often, the persons with this profile also might remain well socially integrated, seemingly, but decompensated state, so to say. When that is provoked, then the whole thing, the basic profile comes through. And so what would be inconceivable for most of us, you and I, would be quite all right for such persons.
The biggest problem now is nailing Aftab. It's been 5 months since the murder was committed. Now, the police have applied for permission for a polygraph test in a bid to make him crack. But is it going to be that easy? A psychopath may easily manipulate such an investigative tool.
If he is so hard, is such a hardened criminal, he can deceive you even in the narco test. Narco test is there for a normal human being, but this man seems to be abnormal and abnormally tough mentally as far as violence is concerned.
There are crimes of passion, is that there might be resistance to confession. But once the person confesses, he or she is consistent and owns up the entire thing. Whereas a person with psychopathic personality profile is going to keep doing, as I suspect this person is doing. Manipulation, besides the cold indifferent acts, total lack of sensitivity, empathy, and guilt.
Police will have to work very hard on the case to get as much circumstantial evidence as possible because there is no live witness.
Psychopath's central issue is egocentricity, as it's called, preservation and promotion of self. So crime having been committed in whatever circumstances it must have been, as we'll get to know later, I guess from all the information available, this person's prime and the only motive was self-defense and getting oneself out of it.
This case also brought to the fore about the crumbling social structure we have in metropolises. People living alone and nobody wants anybody else to, be a part of their life. This is the reason why this case came out 5 months after that butchering had taken place.
I mean, it's not a good trend. I think the old social structure is disintegrating, and in its place, we are witnessing a highly self-centered family system where you are not bothered about your parents, you are not bothered about near relations, forget about the neighbors.
So I won't intrude in your life, you don't intrude my life, don't take liberties, don't ask questions, don't pry. Unfortunately, this social isolation leads to the situation that you said.
Even as the police attempts to build a watertight case against Aftab, the spotlight now shows on the mental health crisis in India. Ignoring mental health can prove fatal. Ask Shraddha Walker.
From crime, we move to crime in the virtual world. The 20th century had Photoshop. The 21st century has deepfakes. Now, deepfakes are where artificial intelligence tools are used to manipulate and create images which are entirely untrue. They can be used to create falsehoods. Prime Minister Modi has flagged his concern over the proliferation of deepfakes. And joining me today is cybersecurity expert Kanishk Gaur to talk about the problem, the menace of deepfakes. Kanishk, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Kanishk, first off, what do we need to do? Is there a need for an international system to govern deepfakes, prevent their misuse the way we are seeing in the last couple of days and weeks?
There has been no international system so far to cover deepfakes. However, what we have seen is that United Nations has taken the initiative to put together a task force for countering artificial intelligence and its hindsight. So there is a UN level task force which is going to be set up to counter issues which deepfake is creating today, which includes misinformation, fake news, including deepfakes. But so far there has been nothing. It's the European Union which has come up with an AI Act to cover ethics of AI, and that's the most forward-looking law that is moving forward. Otherwise, the world largely remains ungoverned when it comes to AI.
So, are there any easy to use, accessible technology solutions that people can use to detect deepfakes, authenticate media and such?
So there are open source tools and there are commercial tools which are available today, which could be downloaded and used for fact checking. There's a tool called as Cortex. There are other open source technology tools which can be downloaded on your Google Play Store, or which can be downloaded on your desktops and laptops, which can help you fact check, which can look at the timestamp of the deepfakes, which can help you detect the source from where this has been created. However, these are more hard to use. Not everybody would be trained or technically equipped or digitally literate to use some of these tools. It would require some level of technical understanding to decipher what is a deepfake. So for a common man, it remains a big risk because they don't have much of techniques and methods. Largely, it should be initiative which should be taken by the government or by the big tech, which are there to bring some of these tools on their platforms as part of design. So if you've got Facebook or you've got Meta should have a de facto tool which people can use to fact check a particular news. We have seen that Twitter, when they label specific news as being fake, they put out certain details. But for fact checking, we haven't seen any kind of tool or technology which is available on other social media platforms, whether it is Meta's Facebook or whether it is Instagram or it is Threads. That is which is currently lacking, and we have seen most of the fake news originate from social media platforms and it spreads like a wildfire. So companies like Meta need to do more, primarily to safeguard user harm and protect online safety, integrity and trust.
Right. So Union Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar, mighty minister, he said that he was reacting to this deepfake video of the actress Rashmika Mandanna, and he's asked for it to be taken down immediately, the video. And he said that if the platforms don't comply with this, Rule 7 will apply and platforms can be taken to court under the provisions of the IPC. So obviously there is a mechanism in place to monitor deepfakes and to take them down and punish platforms that are violating the law. So do we need stricter implementation of the rules? What is the kind of mechanism that we need to oversee deepfakes?
These are more reactive. What we have is more reactive, that if a particular video goes viral, then the law will apply and we can take the platforms to court. In a country like India, where we have a strong digitally literate population and a very strong penetration of internet-enabled services, where Facebook, Meta, WhatsApp, these platforms have crores of users.
Right.
We need more proactive measures to deter and detect deepfakes. Once a particular news goes viral with a deepfake, the damage is already done.
Right.
We are moving towards election, and these deepfakes can create havoc. They can lead to physical conflict on ground. They can lead to riots. It can lead to misinterpretation of facts. It can lead to speeches which could be wrongly put and create polarization in our community. So as India moves to election, particularly Lok Sabha election, it is very, very important we have proactive measures to monitor, and government should put forward and bring out a law. It should not just be focused on national security, it should be on user safety and security. For a common man, if you and I find out there is a fake video which is populating on the internet, which impacts you and me, where do we go? Right. Do we need to go and approach the court for it, for getting that taken down? Is there a mechanism where we can report this fake video on any government portal and saying this is a fake video and I am the person against whom this has been targeted? Is there a redressable mechanism in this country? I don't think so that exists right now.
So we need a new law. We need a new law to govern deepfakes, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, we need a new law to govern deepfake. We need a new law to cover the misharm, the agony, the pain it can cause to people.
Right.
Today it is the celebrities. Tomorrow it is going to be common people, because these tools are available free of cost on the internet.
So Kanish, just tell us how much worse is it going to get? Like, I mean, right now what we're seeing is a few cases here and there. While they're as alarming as they are, what is it going to look like a few months down the line? You know, we are fully aware of the fact that technology is increasing, literally doubling every few months, and the cost of that technology is coming down substantially. So how much worse can deepfakes get in the months ahead?
See, our Honorable Prime Minister spoke about a video which was created using deepfake, where he saw himself doing Garba.
Right.
He has never done Garba. If it starts with the Prime Minister, then it can go and impact anyone. It can impact the leader of the opposition.
Yeah.
It can impact the Supreme Court Chief Justice. It can impact the President, the Prime Minister. The speeches which our leaders make during election rallies, those could be misinterpreted, created a short script and made viral. And it can lead to a physical situation on ground because a particular leader said something against a specific community.
Right.
Whereas he would have not said that. It could be journalists misreporting a particular fact and that video going viral. Can you imagine you reporting a news and that being misinterpreted and put on social media platforms, and then government coming after you saying that you are spreading misinformation? That is the risk that we are living in today, because that could be used not against just one person, it can be used against a specific community. And we have a big population in India which comes from different types of religion, and we have seen civil unrest happening because of religious issues and polarization. A lot of political parties have ideologies which are closely connected to religion, right? And they keep on blaming the other parties. All of this can be planted, situation can be created. I will take you to Kerala. What was happening in Hamas and happening on ground in Israel and Gaza. We saw that there was a specific bomb blast which had happened. That happened because a video was being broadcasted of a Hamas leader. Now, if some video like that is misinterpreted and made viral, then it can lead to more conflict on ground in India.
Absolutely.
So for us to safeguard our democracy, to safeguard safety of our people, it's very important at this point of time that we bring in certain laws to counter misinformation, fake news, deepfake videos, which can be used during elections and also during normal times. That's one of the things which is much needed right now.
Much needed right now, as the threat can only snowball in the days and weeks ahead. Thank you very much for your thoughts and suggestions, Kanishk. In fact, we did this story recently on the threat of deepfakes, the dark side of artificial intelligence technology. We'll leave you with this story. Thanks for watching.
President Trump is a total and complete dipshit. Now, you see, I would never say these things, at least not in a public address, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele.
Did President Obama say those things?
No.
But it looks pretty realistic. It's a realistic video because it's called a deep fake.
Will you believe everything I say? Because how do you know that it's me, a real person, and not an artificial intelligence bot or avatar? Now, unfortunately, while at one end we've seen artificial intelligence really doing things that were unimaginable, it also has a slightly darker side, and the dark side comes from deepfake, which not only impersonates the face of a person and the actions of a person, but also the voice. And with that, it becomes a very difficult environment to navigate because you don't know what you are seeing is real or fake.
There might be certain public figures that it should not edit. There might be certain contexts that it should not edit. We can think of these scenarios. So if we are a degree ahead and visualize what these tools would do, or what if these malicious guys get an access to these tools, what could be the possibility that they do? I think the game is there, That is where we'll have to kind of build systems around these generators. So at source only we control this. And then the access to deepfakes. What kind of video am I processing? Is it of a public figure? Is it a too personal video about anyone? Such checks and balances have to be there.
The NBA trusted me with the next generation.
Recently there was a very weird news I read, entirely plausible, but it talked about talking to the dead. How do you do that? The same deep fake, they have taken your dead relative, your close relative, it could be the parents, it could be anyone, and they make a deep fake video of that person and then feed within artificial intelligence so that person is having a conversation with you. But some other people seem to like it, but technically this is possible and this is happening.
During Ukraine war, wherein the hackers using the AI technology beamed a video on a popular news channel where the president of Ukraine was shown appealing his citizens and soldiers to surrender to Russians. There have been instances of, Pentagon has been bombed, kind of AI enabled or AI generated pictures have been shown on internet or channels. So these kind of things, when you try to analyze the event around what is happening, around that time, try to cross check the facts, then you can come to know about the reality. But if a common man, he sees these kind of things, then they can be tricked into believing, yes.
I'm particularly worried about the scope for disinformation using AI, particularly in the defense architecture. Those systems are eventually penetrated by deep fakes and by artificial intelligence, it could result in a lot of chaos.
Now, obviously, deep fake technology poses significant dangers and to the world and to India as well. And imagine when you're at the cusp of election season, featuring a fairly influential political leader from a party that you follow and perhaps an opposition, where it becomes very difficult for you to understand, given the polarization and the confusion, where something that actually came into your social media feed was actually never said.
We have seen how algorithmic biases can perpetuate discrimination and prejudice, and how the lack of transparency can undermine public trust.
The words were not mine, and the audio was an AI voice cloning software trained on my floor speeches. The remarks were written by ChatGPT. The audio and my playing it may strike you as curious or humorous, but what reverberated in my mind was, what if it had provided an endorsement of Ukraine surrendering?
A classic example of artificial intelligence-powered voice cloning, really. In a US Senate hearing on AI, artificial intelligence, Senator Richard Blumenthal's voice was actually cloned to really try and drive home the dangerous possibilities of unregulated, unrestricted AI advancements. In response, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, acknowledged these very dangers of the technology.
I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong. And we want to be vocal about that. We want to work with the government.
Case of this voice cloning, it has been perfected to a large extent. There's a case in the Western world we see in the media where a mother has received a call from a person demanding a ransom, and her daughter, she swears it is 100% her daughter's voice. The daughter is asking for help on the phone and she is in distress, and when you're in distress you cannot be very calculative, you cannot be very objective, you are in a panic mode, and that was the case with this lady. Thankfully she called her daughter after that and found out that the daughter is completely elsewhere and she is safe. Then later found out that it's a fake one. So these are all very easy to happen, because if you pick up the phone and hear the exact voice of a near and dear one in problem, I think a lot of us would not be very rational and objective, and we are in a panic mode and we are rushing to help. That is what the scamsters are looking for.
Even if they can't directly pull levers, they can certainly get us to pull levers. It turns out if you can manipulate people, you can invade a building in Washington without ever going there yourself.
It's hard to ignore the warnings which are coming from no less than even Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI. Of course, Hinton cautioned against unregulated advancements in the field of AI, but he's not alone. Even Elon Musk, Tesla's SpaceX chief, he plans to work towards combating the threat with something called Truth GPT. That is his answer to ChatGPT, which of course is a commonly used AI bot which has been called out for spreading misinformation.
I'm going to start something which I know you call Truth GPT, or a maximum truth-seeking AI that tries to understand the nature of the universe. This might be the best path to safety.
Today, if you ask ChatGPT the sources, it doesn't give you those sources. It can even make up those sources. So the degree of hallucination it was happening or it is undergoing, you don't have an access to that. So your subjective wisdom is required. So if there is an objective bot that can trace down where it is getting those information from and show you those source of truth, and you can apply your intelligence and find out how it is synthesizing, I think that gives you an access to how this is being made up, and that will give you some control over how to use it. So what he's doing is he's making people use ChatGPT in a more efficient and reliable way. So he's not actually against it, he's actually building a good innovation around it. Yeah.
Look, the dangers of rapid AI growth have been acknowledged by many global leaders. In fact, they are apparently taking proactive steps to implement certain regulations. India is also working towards addressing AI and deepfake threats, and there is a regulatory framework which is coming in place through the Digital Personal Protection Bill, also the Digital India Bill, which will replace the IT Act of 2000, and it's likely to be tabled in the monsoon session of the Parliament.
The very pioneers of AI are warning us about the ways these technologies could undermine our values and freedoms, through to the most extreme risks of all. And that's why leading on AI also means leading on AI safety.
Scientists and experts have called on the world to act, declaring AI an existential threat to humanity.
So I think it is more about stopping misuse of AI agents like deepfakes and extortions using this. I think that is the real danger as of now. So I think immediately what we should work on are these regulations, policies, how we can make them more secure. I think that is more important.
See, too much regulation is obviously a bad thing, but the rising integration of AI and ML in defense, for example, underlines the need for regulation.
AI in defense is going to be a game changer. Look at the positive side. Suppose a combat happens. A nation has the potential to save the blood of its soldier. Why won't it? You know how Bin Laden was caught? He was caught through triangulation of a lot of analytics. So it's already there. Again, who gets the access to that? So if you ask me defense, the regulation of AI has to be huge there.
Bomb threat can be diffused by a robot. A human life can be saved.
Hello human, I'm a humanoid robot.
Now obviously, harnessing AI responsibly has the potential to unlock productivity at an industrial level and of course help people do better at the jobs that they are doing with assistance from AI. Some limit to regulation is a must. Now will this regulation or should this regulation come from governments? Should it come from platform providers or at the end of the day with users like you and me, where we look at whatever is out there with a bit of suspicion and try and look at the sources that have corroborated that information.
Yeah, I'll be right there, Steve. Hey, what's up, TikTok? Look, I do a lot of my own stunts, but I also do a lot of industrial cleanup, okay?